Welcome back to Refired. And today I am not just fired up, I am historically offended. I just completed my 2025 tax returns, and it included a new one for me, business personal property tax. And it kind of reminded me of a bitter truth. In America, not only do you never truly own your home, you really don't own much of anything. Property taxes in general are a scam. You can pay off the bank, burn the mortgage, hold the deed in your hand. But if you stop paying the government their protection money for a year or two, they will take your house. We aren't owners, we are perpetual renters from the state. And today I'm going to show you the history and name the names of the treacherous, greedy bastards that turn the American dream into a lifetime subscription service. And speaking of subscriptions, if you like this type of content, useless facts, a little dose of sarcasm sprinkled over the top, then hit that like and subscribe button. It really is the best way to help out the channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Now, to find the dawn of the tax man, we have to go all the way back to ancient Sumeria, around 2100 BC. This is what we now think of as modern day Iraq. So around 2100 BC, a group of what we'll call clever scribes came up with a system called Bala, which literally means rotation, because they'd rotate through the city month by month, assessing your grain, your cattle, your land. They're essentially the world's first tax assessors, for lack of a better term. And it gets worse. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs collected taxes mostly in grain, which supported the royal administration and massive state projects like temple and pyramid construction. In ancient Egypt, in the mind of the Egyptians, if they didn't pay the pharaohs, they were essentially in trouble with the living God. And after all, that's how the pharaohs thought of themselves. But when I look at government and taxation today, I don't really see that much of a difference. Even the Rosetta Stone, which unlocked human history for us, was not an epic poem. It was a decree issued in 196 BC that, among other things, granted tax exemptions and privileges to temple priests. Now, essentially, what that means is even 2,000 years ago, the well connected got all the breaks, while the rest of us footed the bill for the pyramids. And even before Christ, churches figured out a way to not pay taxes. Now, if you really want to know who decided that the government is the ultimate landlord, blame William the Conqueror in 1066. He decided that he would invade England, and he didn't just want the land. He wanted to know how much he could squeeze out of them. So he commissioned this thing called the Domesday Book, but I'll just call it the Doomsday Book. That's basically where all this ends up. His tax inquisitors would go house to house. They'd count every pig, every cow, every acre of land. William was basically the original Slick Willie, because to William, nobody owned any land. They were just holding it for him. And our modern property tax system has the same exact DNA. The 1,000-year-old feudal relic that says, bend the knee. Your hard work belongs to the crown first. I thought we fought a revolution over taxes, but what about the land of the free? Well, if you want to know who the greedy, maniacal son of a bitch that is ultimately responsible here in America for this perpetual bullshit cash grab, it's John Adams. He let us down in 1798. To fund a war, he signed something called the Direct Tax Act of 1798. But a little over 100 years before that, in 1696, in England, William III of England created something called the window tax. Tax collectors literally went house to house counting windows to estimate your wealth. People literally started boarding up their windows just to avoid paying. And when John Adams signed his tax act, it had a window element in it. So when farmers in Pennsylvania saw this happening, they'd seen that shit before under British rule, and they weren't having any part of it. Their resistance became what was known as the Fries Rebellion. It's one of the first major tax revolts in a young United States. So just in case you think that taxes are crazy now, remember, they were trying to tax your access to sunlight way back before 1800. So, as crazy as that decision was, remember, it wasn't permanent. It was done for a war. So, how did it become permanent at the local level? Here's what I found. A lot of historians credit the Illinois Constitution of 1818. But to be fair, annual property taxes at the local level did not start with any one state. Colonies like Massachusetts and others were already assessing taxes on land, livestock, and property as early as the 1600s. By the time Illinois wrote its constitution in 1818, the system's tentacles were already deeply embedded into the American government. So, as tempting as it may be to try and blame them, the Illinois Constitution of 1818 didn't invent property tax. What it did was require uniform taxation. In simple terms, what that meant was property taxes had to be uniform. Similar property must be taxed at the same rate. Many later states copied that idea. So Illinois standardized the rules, but the system already existed. So, are you ready for the final betrayal? It came in the 1930s during the Great Depression. So, during the 1930s, states were going broke because people couldn't afford to pay their property taxes. So, Mississippi, forward societal thinkers that they were at the time, came up with the idea of a general sales tax to grab some quick cash. Shortly thereafter, many other states followed. And unfortunately, once states had sales and income taxes, they didn't abolish their property taxes. They just dumped them onto local governments and they turned your home into a permanent piggy bank for local bureaucrats. Because they know that you'll never vote to defund the schools, they trapped us at the local level with nowhere left to run. But that's just your house. When did they start coming for your other stuff? Well, Connecticut, back in the early 1800s, already had laws to tax horse drawn carriages and wagons. So when motor vehicles were invented, they just swapped the horse for an engine. And by 1903, states realized that they could use the registrations to make sure that nobody escaped the tax man. Of course, they extend this privilege to boats, trailers, and pretty much anything else that they can wrap their greed infested fat little fucking fingers on. And here's a kicker for my refired business owners. If you use a computer or a desk or pretty much anything else that you've listed for your business, you're hit with a business personal property tax. Because in many states, the moment that you claim that laptop as a business expense, the local government considers themselves your partner in that equipment. They expect you to file a return every year, listing every desk, every chair, every computer, and pay a fee for the privilege of using your own tools that you already bought and paid taxes on with the money that you already earned and paid taxes on. Because after all, using those tools enables you to make more money and pay more taxes. So if you happen to think that you were smart by claiming that computer was a business expense so that you could get a little bit of a write off, just know that there is some little cunt knuckle bean counter somewhere that is laughing at you because you just signed up to pay a yearly fee to use what you already owned. So here's the refired reality. Let's say you bought your house 20 or 30 years ago for like $150,000. You've loved it, you've maintained it, you've kept it up, and you've paid it off. Your local assessor, the douchebag I was talking about earlier, he sees the improvements that you've made, and now he thinks your house is worth 450 to 500,000, and he wants a piece of that imaginary profit every single year in cash. Here's the mic drop moment for 2026. In Salem County, New Jersey, the effective tax rate is around 2.3%. At that rate, you effectively buy your home back from the government every 43 years or so. If you live in your forever home for retirement, you've essentially paid for it once to the bank and then another time to the tax man. In 2026, the average New Jersey tax bill has cleared $10,500. That's nearly $900 a month just for the privilege of standing on the property that you already bought. And the reason that I decided to rant about property taxes on this channel of all channels is because property taxes are an evil tax that prey on the elderly. You could have essentially done everything in your life right. You could have bought a house, maintained it, paid for it on time every time. You could have bought it 30 years ago, and your payment might have been less with your mortgage, your property taxes, and your insurance all combined as to what your payment on your property taxes is 30 or 40 years after you bought it. The truth is, I can make a compelling argument against a lot of different types of taxes, but property taxes, I think, are probably the most usury and the most unfair, especially to elderly people. So, are you an owner or are you a renter? In my opinion, we're all kind of renters, no matter if we own anything or not. And maybe that's what they mean by one day you will own nothing and be happy about it. That's what they say. They say that one day all of us will own nothing and be happy about it. And maybe that's their plan. Just tax the fuck out of everybody until nobody wants to own anything anymore. Let me know what your most outrageous tax story is in the comments. I read every one of them. I mean, partly for research and partly because misery loves company. And I know I've been ranting pretty good about property taxes, but don't let those greedy bastards grind you down. Check your exemptions, file your appeals, and stay refired. I'll see you in the next one.